He stood defiant, while the princess defied the entire council. From the highest spire, the view of the capital's bustling streets was almost hypnotic. Starships hovered gently above landing pads, and transport tubes carried citizens from place to place with quiet efficiency. It was a world built on human ingenuity, and yet beneath the beauty there was tension. The Council of Elders, the governing body of the system, had recently announced a law that angered many, one that restricted interstellar scientific research, claiming that unchecked experiments could endanger planetary stability. Captain Rylan Cade strode along the wide promenade leading to the main plaza. His uniform was crisp, his posture perfect, but his eyes betrayed a restless energy. People turned to glance at him as he passed, some in awe, some in curiosity. Rylan had become known not just as a skilled pilot, but as someone who refused to bow blindly to authority. He had always believed that rules were important, yes, but that reason and evidence should guide their application. In a secluded corner of the plaza, a small group of young scientists waited nervously. They had heard whispers of the new law and knew that their work, though harmless in intention, could now be shut down at a moment's notice. Rylan approached them with a calm smile. "Are you ready?" he asked. His voice carried confidence, not arrogance. The scientists nodded. They had heard about his defiance before, about how he had challenged bureaucrats without raising his voice, relying instead on facts, patience, and a careful sense of timing. Today, he would do the same. Together, they moved toward the council building, where a session on the new law was to be held. Inside, the chamber was vast, with walls lined by golden panels that reflected light from the massive windows. The council members sat in a semicircle, each robed in colors that indicated their rank. The atmosphere was tense, as though the very air was waiting for a spark. Rylan stepped forward, placing a hand on the table near the podium. He did not shout, he did not threaten. Instead, he spoke clearly and logically, explaining the potential benefits of the young scientist's work. "Our understanding of energy fields and planetary ecosystems has grown in ways that could help all of Elendra, not harm it," he said. His voice was steady, carrying to every corner of the chamber. "If we stifle this research now, we are not protecting our world. We are limiting the very qualities that have made humanity thrive: curiosity, ingenuity, and courage." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some council members frowned, others leaned forward, intrigued. The room was silent for a moment, and then the youngest member, a woman named Arida, spoke. "Captain Cade makes a strong point," she said. "We must consider the benefits as carefully as the risks. Is there a way to allow controlled research rather than a blanket ban?" Her voice was hesitant but firm, and it carried weight because of the calm logic behind it. Rylan nodded. "Controlled research is exactly what I propose. With proper oversight, these projects will advance knowledge without compromising safety. Humanity has always grown by testing boundaries carefully. That is how we have reached the stars in the first place." He looked around, his gaze steady. "I ask the council to remember that fear should never guide policy. Wisdom should." For a moment, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. Then, as if on cue, several members exchanged glances, murmuring among themselves. The tension was palpable, but Rylan did not flinch. He had learned long ago that defiance did not need to be loud to be powerful. It only needed to be truthful, steady, and unyielding. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the capital, Princess Celera observed the events from her private quarters in the royal palace. She had grown up learning to respect protocol, to smile politely, and to nod when the council spoke. But something about Rylan's approach stirred a thought deep inside her. She had always known the council's laws were strict, sometimes too strict, but she had never dared challenge them openly. Yet watching Rylan defend the young scientists made her heart race with possibility. Celera moved to a small balcony overlooking the city. Below, the streets were alive with citizens going about their day, oblivious to the undercurrents of political tension. And yet, she knew that change often started with a single voice, a single act of courage. Could she be that voice? Could she stand beside someone like Rylan, defying tradition not out of anger but out of reason and care? She did not have to wait long to find out. Later that afternoon, Rylan returned to the palace under a formal invitation from the princess herself. The corridors of the palace were grand, but Celera received him in a private study, a room filled with books, star charts, and models of distant planets. "You have courage, Captain Cade," she said quietly, yet with conviction. Not everyone would speak to the council as you did. Rylan inclined his head, his calm demeanor unchanged. Courage is not the absence of fear, Your Highness. It is the choice to act when reason and morality guide us. The council must listen to reason, or they risk silencing the very thing that makes humanity strong. Celera's eyes sparkled. And yet standing up for what is right can be dangerous. I have seen what happens to those who challenge the council too openly. Danger is part of growth, Rylan replied. But measured, thoughtful defiance does not mean recklessness. We guide change carefully, step by step. The princess leaned back in her chair, considering his words. She had always been taught to follow, not lead. Yet here was a man who stood firm not with weapons, not with threats, but with conviction and wisdom. Could she find a way to support him, to support the young scientists, without putting herself at risk? Over the next days, Celera began moving quietly behind the scenes. She provided subtle assistance, access codes, historical data, research approvals that seemed ordinary but made a significant difference. Rylan noticed the support but said nothing, letting her take pride in her small acts of courage. Each day, their quiet partnership strengthened, a bond built not on romance but on mutual respect, trust, and shared purpose. The city began to notice Rylan's stance. Citizens whispered in cafes, schools, and marketplaces about the captain who refused to follow orders blindly. People admired his calm insistence on reason, and slowly, hope began to spread. If one man could challenge the council respectfully and intelligently, perhaps others could too. Celera's own feelings of isolation faded as well. She realized that her role as princess was not just ceremonial. She had influence, the ability to open doors, and most importantly, the ability to show that even a young leader could act with wisdom and courage. With Rylan's example, she began to see herself as more than a figurehead. She could be a guide for change, a protector of humanity's curiosity and ingenuity. One afternoon, the council reconvened to discuss new restrictions on energy research. Rylan entered the chamber first, followed quietly by Celera. The room went silent as members noticed the princess among the audience. Their eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in surprise. It was unusual for royalty to attend such a session without ceremonial formalities. Rylan took his place at the podium. "Council members," he began, "I return to this chamber not to argue out of defiance, but to remind you of our greatest strength, humanity itself. We grow not by clinging to old rules, but by testing boundaries thoughtfully, by using our intellect to guide our actions. These young scientists represent that very spirit. We owe it to them and to our people to give their work a chance to flourish under guidance, not restriction." Murmurs filled the chamber again. Some council members frowned, some nodded. Celera watched as Rylan spoke, her heart swelling with admiration. She understood now that leadership was not just about giving orders. It was about inspiring, protecting, and guiding others with clarity and courage. As the session ended, the council adjourned to deliberate privately. Rylan left the chamber slowly, glancing at Celera, who met his gaze with a small but determined smile. They both knew that change would not come easily. The council was powerful, tradition was strong, and many would resist even the smallest reforms. Yet as they stepped out into the late afternoon sun, the twin suns casting long shadows across the city, they felt a quiet thrill. The first steps had been taken. A spark had been lit. And somewhere deep in their minds, both knew that this was only the beginning of something greater. A journey in which human courage, intellect, and creativity would be tested, celebrated, and ultimately remembered. The city of Elendra bustled around them, unaware that two figures had quietly begun a rebellion of reason and hope. One stood openly, defiant yet calm. The other, young and royal, moved in quiet support, ready to defy not out of anger but out of love for humanity itself. Together, they had begun something that no law, no council, and no fear could extinguish, the celebration of what made humans extraordinary. And in that moment, both Rylan and Celera felt it clearly. Humanity was not bound by the limitations others imposed. Humanity was limitless when guided by courage, reason, and heart. Days passed in the capital city of Elendra, but the quiet stir of change grew louder with each passing hour. The council deliberated behind closed doors, unaware that their citizens had already begun discussing the events of the last session. Rylan Cade moved through the city as if it were his own domain, though he was careful to remain respectful and unobtrusive. People greeted him with nods, smiles, and quiet words of encouragement. Some children ran up to catch a glimpse of the captain whose words had shaken the council, their eyes wide with admiration and curiosity. Rylan visited the young scientists again. They were working in a hidden laboratory, tucked beneath one of Elendra's less conspicuous towers. The room was filled with glowing screens, star charts, and models of energy fields. Although the council had yet to revoke their permission entirely, the threat of restriction hung over them like a shadow. Rylan moved among them with ease, observing their work, asking questions, and offering encouragement. "Your calculations are solid," he said to one of the young engineers, a tall man with glasses and a nervous smile. "Don't let fear slow you down. We are here to show that careful, thoughtful work can thrive under guidance, not control." The scientist nodded, visibly relaxed for the first time in days. "Captain Cade, it means a lot that you stand with us. Some of us were afraid to speak up, afraid that the council would shut everything down." Ryland's expression was calm but firm. "The council may try to silence us, but the truth will always find a way. Humans are naturally curious, and curiosity cannot be contained. It only needs a voice." Meanwhile, Princess Celara was navigating her own subtle rebellion. She moved quietly through palace corridors, gaining access to files and historical records that the council had long kept hidden. Her eyes scanned every page carefully. Some documents contained ancient treaties, others held forgotten technological plans, and a few even detailed ways to safely expand research without harming planets. Each discovery was a small victory. With each piece of information, she felt more confident that change was possible. Celara approached Rylan one evening in the hidden laboratory. The room was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of screens and instruments. "I've found something that might help," she said, placing a stack of records on a table. "These documents show ways to monitor energy experiments safely. They could convince the council that research doesn't have to be dangerous." Rylan leaned over the papers, scanning quickly. His eyes lit up with interest. "This is perfect," he said. "It shows that human ingenuity can provide solutions to the council's concerns. With this, we can make a strong, rational case." Celara smiled faintly, her heart swelling with pride. She had never thought she could contribute in such a meaningful way. Watching Rylan's calm confidence and the young scientist's determination, she realized that leadership was not about controlling others. It was about enabling them to do their best. The days turned into a week, and the city began to buzz with anticipation. Word of Rylan's defiance spread further, reaching citizens in marketplaces, schools, and transport hubs. People began speaking more openly about the council's restrictions, questioning their fairness and relevance. Small groups formed to discuss ideas, share knowledge, and support the scientists' work. Citizens realized that the true strength of Elendra did not lie in strict laws, but in the creativity, courage, and intelligence of its people. Rylan and Celara worked together to coordinate their efforts. He spoke at public forums, explaining the importance of curiosity and careful exploration. He did not shout, he did not berate the council. Instead, he asked questions, presented evidence, and highlighted examples of humanity's achievements. Each speech inspired new listeners, who in turn shared the message with friends, family, and colleagues. Celara, on the other hand, continued her quiet support. She met with officials sympathetic to her cause, providing guidance and opening doors that had long been closed. Slowly, a network of allies began to form, united by a shared belief in the potential of human creativity and reason. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the city in shades of gold and violet, Rylan and Celara met on the balcony of the palace. The view was breathtaking, with starships glinting in the fading light and the city's towers glowing softly. "The council won't change overnight," Rylan said, his gaze steady. "They are bound by tradition and fear is difficult to overcome. But every conversation we inspire, every mind we touch, moves us closer to reason and progress." Celara nodded. "I understand that now. I used to think that my role was to follow orders, to remain polite and silent. But I see now that leadership means guiding others, helping them realize their potential, and standing for what is right even when it is difficult." Rylan's expression softened slightly. "You've always had the potential, Your Highness. Courage is not born from loud actions. It grows in quiet conviction. and you have it in abundance. The following morning, Rylan and Celera attended another council session, this time to present the evidence Celera had uncovered. The chamber was tense, filled with officials whose eyes flickered between curiosity and caution. The young scientists accompanied them, their faces bright with hope and determination. Rylan stepped forward. Council members, we return not to argue for defiance, but for understanding. These documents demonstrate safe methods for energy research that respect planetary stability while allowing human ingenuity to flourish. This is not rebellion. This is reason, preparation, and care. Celera followed, her voice calm but firm. Our people look to us not only to govern, but to guide. They look for wisdom, fairness, and courage. Restricting knowledge does not protect them, it limits their potential. Let us lead by example, showing that humanity thrives when we embrace knowledge responsibly. The council members murmured among themselves. Some were visibly uncomfortable, unaccustomed to a princess speaking with such clarity and authority. Others were intrigued, leaning forward to listen more closely. Rylan and Celera did not rush to fill the silence. Instead, they let the ideas speak for themselves. Slowly, the council began to respond, asking questions about the research methods, the monitoring systems, and the safeguards. Rylan answered each query calmly, Celera providing details from the ancient records she had uncovered. Together, they demonstrated that careful preparation and thoughtful oversight could prevent any harm while fostering progress. Outside the council chambers, citizens gathered to watch and listen. Though they could not hear every word, news spread quickly about the princess and the captain standing together, advocating for reason and human potential. Children whispered to each other about courage, scientists felt renewed purpose, and ordinary citizens began to hope that the council could be guided toward better decisions. As the session concluded, Rylan and Celera stepped into the sunlight, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. They knew the council was not yet fully convinced, but they had planted seeds of thought, sparks of curiosity and reason that could not be easily extinguished. Over the next few days, the city seemed to hum with energy. Citizens discussed the session openly, schools held debates, and even market vendors spoke about the possibilities of exploration and knowledge. Rylan continued his public talks, not as a defiant captain, but as a teacher, mentor, and example of calm courage. Celera moved quietly behind the scenes, ensuring that the young scientists had the resources they needed and that allies within the council could support their case. One evening, while reviewing plans with the scientists, Rylan paused. "We are making progress," he said, his voice steady. "But the real test is not convincing the council with evidence alone. It is showing the people that courage, wisdom, and reason can guide our actions. When the citizens believe in our cause, change becomes unstoppable." Celera nodded. "And that is why we must be careful, not reckless, not loud, but consistent. Every small act matters. Every conversation, every piece of knowledge shared strengthens the movement." The scientists worked late into the night, adjusting simulations, checking calculations, and preparing presentations. Rylan moved among them, offering insight and encouragement, while Celera quietly reviewed council records and historical texts. Together, they built a strategy that combined careful reasoning with inspiring leadership, proving that humanity's strength lay not in force, but in intelligence, collaboration, and moral courage. One afternoon, as Rylan walked through a bustling street filled with citizens discussing the upcoming council session, a young girl ran up to him. "Captain Cade," she said, her eyes bright, "my school is talking about your speeches. They say we should never be afraid to ask questions or try new ideas. Is that true?" Rylan knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "Yes," he said gently. "Curiosity is a gift. It helps us understand the universe and ourselves. Always ask questions, always explore, and always be kind. That is how humanity becomes stronger." The girl's smile was radiant. "I will," she said, running off to tell her friends. Rylan stood quietly, watching her disappear into the crowd, feeling a surge of pride. The city was alive with potential, with young minds ready to carry the spark of knowledge forward. As the sun set over Elendra, casting long shadows across the towers and plazas, Rylan and Celera met once more on the palace balcony. They looked out at the city, at the people moving through the streets with curiosity and purpose. "We are ready for the next session," Rylan said. The council may resist, but we have shown the power of reason and courage. Humanity is awake, and nothing can stop that. Celera smiled, her confidence growing. And we are not alone. The people, the scientists, and even some council members are with us. Together, we can guide change without fear, without anger, and without harm. Rylan nodded. This is only the beginning. But with patience, wisdom, and courage, we can show that humanity's greatest strength lies in its mind, its heart, and its unity. And as the twin suns disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the city bathed in soft twilight, a quiet promise lingered in the air. The spark had grown into a flame, a light of hope, courage, and reason that would guide Elendra into a future defined not by fear, but by the boundless potential of humanity itself. The morning sun bathed Elendra in warm golden light, and the city seemed to hum with anticipation. Citizens moved quickly through the streets, exchanging excited whispers about the upcoming council session. For weeks, rumors had spread about Princess Celera and Captain Rylan Cade standing together in support of the young scientists. People were curious, hopeful, and eager to see whether reason and courage could finally sway the council's rigid decisions. Inside the council chambers, tension was almost tangible. The high ceilings and polished golden panels reflected the sunlight, creating a dazzling, almost overwhelming environment. Council members, usually so composed, shifted nervously in their seats. Their discussions had grown longer and more uncertain since the first session in which Rylan had spoken. Every citizen outside seemed to be waiting, and some of that pressure seemed to creep in through the chamber doors. Rylan Cade entered first, his expression calm but purposeful. He moved slowly to the podium, his footsteps steady, his posture perfectly composed. Behind him, the young scientists followed, carrying data charts, holographic models, and carefully prepared presentations. Princess Celera arrived shortly after, her eyes bright with determination. She wore a simple yet elegant robe, reflecting her role as royalty but not overshadowing her intent. The council members, seeing her enter without ceremony, exchanged quiet glances. It was unusual for a princess to take such an active role, and her presence carried weight. Rylan began speaking immediately, his voice clear and calm, filling the chamber without needing to raise it. Council members, today we return not to argue for rebellion, but to present a vision for progress. The young scientists before you have developed methods to study energy fields safely, without risking planetary stability. These methods are based on evidence, historical precedent, and careful experimentation. He gestured toward the young scientists, who displayed holograms of their calculations and simulations. Humanity has always grown by exploring the unknown. From the first cities to the first starships, we have advanced because we dared to understand more. Our caution must not become fear. Safety can exist alongside curiosity. Murmurs filled the room. Some council members frowned, clearly unconvinced, but others leaned forward, drawn by the clarity and logic of Rylan's words. It was clear that he was not challenging them out of defiance, but out of responsibility. He was offering a path forward, one that aligned with humanity's best qualities, intellect, care, and courage. Princess Celera stepped forward, her voice calm and confident. The council exists to guide humanity wisely. That is our responsibility. But guidance does not mean control, nor does it mean stifling potential. These young scientists are ready to take measured steps, to explore safely, to contribute to the growth of our civilization. If we allow fear to dictate policy, we risk more than their experiments. We risk the very essence of human progress. The chamber fell quiet. Celera's words were not loud, but they carried authority. Her voice did not demand obedience, it invited understanding. She had learned from Rylan that defiance could be powerful when combined with reason and humility. She had also discovered her own voice as a leader, capable of inspiring others without intimidation. One council member, an older man named Lauren, finally spoke. Princess Celera, Captain Cade, your points are noted, but what proof do we have that these methods will not cause harm? Our duty is to protect the people above all else. Rylan nodded, expecting this question. Protection does not require restriction, he replied. The evidence presented here, along with the historical methods uncovered by Princess Celera, shows that oversight, monitoring, and careful experimentation can prevent harm. The goal is not to abandon caution, but to balance it with progress. Humanity grows not through fear, but through thoughtful exploration. Celara added, "We are asking for controlled freedom, not reckless liberty. The young scientists will report findings regularly, follow strict protocols, and demonstrate their methods transparently. The Council can participate in oversight, ensuring safety while allowing growth. This is collaboration, not confrontation." The chamber buzzed with quiet discussion. Some members were clearly considering the proposal seriously, while others remained skeptical. Outside the windows, citizens had gathered in small groups, listening via communication links or waiting for news. Many held signs supporting knowledge and progress, though no words of anger were shouted. It was a quiet, thoughtful demonstration of support, reflecting the values Rylan and Celara had nurtured. One council member, a woman named Arida, spoke with measured clarity. "If this can be done safely, as you claim, it may indeed be a model for future governance. We cannot ignore evidence, nor can we deny that humanity thrives when given space to think and create. I am inclined to support a trial program under strict monitoring." Rylan gave a small, respectful nod. "That is all we ask, the opportunity to demonstrate that humanity can be responsible while exploring new frontiers." Celara smiled faintly. She felt a quiet thrill. The Council's support, even if limited, was a victory. Yet she knew that true change would require persistence, patience, and consistency. The Council had agreed to a trial, but the hearts and minds of all citizens, and the Council itself, still needed to understand the value of courage guided by reason. After the session, Rylan and Celara walked together through the city. The streets were filled with life, and though nothing violent had occurred, there was a sense of excitement, of possibility. Citizens waved or stopped to offer greetings. Children ran alongside them, asking questions about science, exploration, and the stars. Rylan answered each one patiently, his calm demeanor inspiring trust and curiosity. Celara joined in, explaining ideas with clarity and warmth, encouraging young minds to think for themselves. In the following days, the trial program began. Scientists worked under observation, using the safe methods discovered by Celara. Reports were submitted regularly, and each successful experiment strengthened the argument for thoughtful freedom. The Council monitored progress carefully, sometimes questioning procedures, but they could not deny the evidence. Humanity could explore safely when guided by wisdom and integrity. Word of the trial program spread across Elendra. Citizens watched with interest as experiments demonstrated the possibilities of energy research, sustainable systems, and technological innovations. Schools began teaching about these methods, emphasizing critical thinking and collaboration. Families discussed ideas at home, debating how curiosity and responsibility could work together. Slowly, a culture of thoughtful exploration began to grow, driven not by fear, but by inspiration. Rylan and Celara continued to support this movement. They visited schools, labs, and public forums, always speaking calmly and clearly. Their goal was not to dominate or control, but to empower others to act with intelligence and courage. They emphasized that progress required patience, careful thought, and collaboration. Every question from a student, every suggestion from a citizen was treated with respect, reinforcing the idea that humanity's strength lay in its collective mind and heart. One afternoon, Rylan met with a group of older scientists who had been skeptical of the trial. They discussed experiments, methods, and observations in detail. Rylan listened carefully, asked insightful questions, and offered guidance where needed. By the end of the meeting, the scientists were not only convinced of the safety of the methods, but inspired to participate more actively in sharing knowledge with younger generations. Meanwhile, Celara worked with the council members who had shown support. She provided additional historical records, explained the reasoning behind experimental methods, and suggested ways to incorporate oversight without stifling innovation. Her efforts gradually won over more council members, demonstrating that thoughtful leadership could create positive change without conflict or fear. One evening, as the twin suns dipped low in the sky, Rylan and Celara met on the palace balcony. The city below glowed softly in twilight, starships glinting in the fading light. "The council is starting to listen," Rylan said, "but we must continue to show that human ingenuity can thrive safely. Our example matters as much as our words." Celara nodded, her expression determined. And the people are learning as well. They are seeing that courage guided by reason is more powerful than fear. They are beginning to understand that change is not about breaking rules, but about improving them. Ryland smiled faintly. And that is the essence of humanity: curiosity, courage, and care. Every experiment, every conversation, every thoughtful act builds a future worth living for. As night fell over Elendra, the city seemed to hold its breath, alive with possibilities. Citizens walked home, discussing ideas, imagining innovations, and sharing hopes for a future shaped by intelligence and courage. In the labs, scientists continued their work, careful and precise, yet inspired by the support of Rylan and Selara. In the council chambers, members debated thoughtfully, considering evidence and listening to reason rather than relying on fear or tradition alone. In this way, Elendra moved quietly toward a new era. Not through violence, not through rebellion, but through the steady power of intelligence, courage, and moral conviction. Humanity's strength was becoming clear, not in dominance or force, but in the ability to think, reason, and act responsibly. And as Rylan and Selara looked out over the city from the palace balcony, they felt a deep sense of purpose. The spark of change had grown into a steady flame. The citizens, the scientists, and even members of the council were beginning to see the possibilities of a future guided by thoughtful courage. Humanity's potential was not just an idea. It was alive, growing, and ready to shine across the stars. In the quiet of the evening, with the soft glow of Elendra beneath them, Rylan spoke again. "The journey is far from over, Your Highness, but every step we take proves that reason, courage, and collaboration are stronger than fear. Humanity will not be stopped, and our potential is limitless." Selara smiled, her confidence unwavering. "And together we will continue to guide it. For every mind we inspire, for every idea we protect, we are showing what humanity can truly achieve." The city below sparkled under the night sky, alive with curiosity, hope, and the quiet thrill of possibility. The trial program had begun, the council was slowly changing, and the citizens of Elendra were awakening to the truth. That human courage, guided by wisdom and reason, was the most powerful force in the universe. The days passed with steady purpose in Elendra, and the city had begun to change in ways that could not be ignored. Citizens spoke of hope and possibility rather than fear and doubt. Markets buzzed with discussions of scientific progress. Schools held debates about the ethics of experimentation, and families shared ideas about exploration and invention at home. Even the council, though still cautious, began to recognize the potential of guided human ingenuity. Captain Rylan Cade walked through the city streets, observing the signs of progress. Everywhere he looked, there was evidence of human creativity at work. Students building small energy models, engineers discussing sustainable designs, and artists imagining new worlds inspired by scientific concepts. The spark of curiosity that had begun with the young scientists and Princess Selara had spread quietly, like sunlight reaching every corner of the city. He paused near a small park where children were playing under carefully designed energy shields, a demonstration from the trial program showing how technology could enhance safety while encouraging learning. One child waved to him. "Captain Cade, look. I made a solar collector like the ones you showed us." Rylan smiled and knelt to the child's level. "That's excellent. You are learning how to create safely, think carefully, and still explore. Remember, every invention begins with curiosity and careful thought." The child grinned and ran off to show friends, leaving Rylan standing quietly, watching the energy of a future that was already beginning to bloom. It was a simple moment, but it reflected everything he had fought for: an entire generation inspired by knowledge, courage, and careful experimentation. At the palace, Princess Selara was preparing for a council session unlike any other. She had spent days reviewing reports from the trial program, analyzing data, and consulting with allies among the council. The results were promising. Every experiment conducted under careful oversight had succeeded without incident. The young scientists had proven that human potential could be expressed responsibly, and Selara was ready to present the findings to the council in a way that would inspire lasting change. Rylan joined her in the palace study. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. His calm gaze met hers, steady and reassuring. Selara nodded, her confidence shining. "I am. The data is clear, and the people are beginning to understand the value of guided exploration." This session will show the Council that humanity thrives when we embrace curiosity with care. Together, they walked to the Council chambers. As they entered, the members looked up, surprised yet attentive. It was clear that the city's shift in mood had reached them. The halls, once filled with quiet tension, now seemed alive with anticipation. Citizens had been invited to witness the session, not as spectators of rebellion, but as participants in reasoned progress. Rylan stepped to the podium first. "Council members," he said, his voice calm and clear, "we return not with defiance but with evidence. The young scientists have demonstrated that careful experimentation can proceed safely. Every step of their work has been monitored, every result reviewed. Humanity's curiosity, guided by wisdom, has created progress without harm." He gestured toward the scientists, who displayed holograms of their successful experiments. Energy fields stabilized, sustainable designs implemented, and simulations proving that advanced research could coexist with safety protocols. The chamber buzzed with quiet amazement. Celera followed, her tone confident but gentle. "Our people look to us for guidance, but guidance does not mean limitation. The Council's responsibility is to ensure safety, yes, but also to encourage growth. The trial program has proven that we can protect our citizens while allowing human potential to flourish. We are asking for the Council to embrace this vision, not for rebellion, but for the future of our civilization." Some Council members exchanged glances, clearly impressed. One older member, Lauren, who had long been wary of change, leaned forward. "These results are impressive," he said. "I see now that caution and curiosity can coexist. Perhaps we have been too quick to fear the unknown rather than to understand it." Arida, the younger Council member who had shown support from the beginning, smiled. "The people are already seeing the benefits. We have an opportunity to create a model for governance that balances oversight and innovation. I recommend full support for this program." Ryland's expression remained calm, but there was a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. Celera's presence had strengthened every argument, and the evidence was undeniable. The Council's skepticism was giving way to understanding, their fear replaced by curiosity and cautious optimism. After hours of discussion, debate, and review, the Council reached a unanimous decision. The trial program would expand, granting the young scientists full support under continued oversight. The decision was announced to the public immediately, and citizens across the city celebrated quietly, with smiles, laughter, and discussions of what new possibilities lay ahead. Rylan and Celera left the Council chambers, walking through the city streets filled with citizens eager to share the news. Children ran ahead, waving models and sketches inspired by the scientists' work. Adults exchanged ideas, planning small projects and experiments of their own. Elendra was alive with curiosity and hope, a city moving forward not through fear or conflict, but through reason, courage, and shared purpose. In the following days, the changes became even more visible. Schools incorporated lessons from the trial program, teaching students about careful experimentation, critical thinking, and responsible innovation. Labs throughout the city flourished, with young scientists and engineers working collaboratively, guided by mentors like Rylan. Even the Council continued to evolve, listening more closely to reasoned arguments and seeking ways to support progress rather than restrict it. Celera, observing these changes, felt a quiet pride. She had once believed that her role was only ceremonial, that her voice did not matter. Now she understood the power of leadership guided by wisdom and courage. By supporting Rylan, the young scientists, and the citizens, she had helped create an environment where humanity could grow safely, responsibly, and boldly. Rylan, too, recognized the transformation. Humanity's strength was not in weapons, not in dominance, but in thought, collaboration, and moral courage. Every discussion, every careful experiment, and every inspired mind was a step forward for civilization. He had always believed in the potential of people, and now that belief was becoming reality. One evening, as the twin suns set, casting Elendra in a soft golden glow, Rylan and Celera met on the palace balcony. Below them, citizens moved through streets that were alive with possibility. Starships glinted in the fading light, and the city seemed to pulse with quiet energy and hope. "The Council has agreed," Rylan said, "but the most important change is not theirs alone." The citizens, the scientists, and even the younger council members are embracing curiosity, responsibility, and courage. That is the real triumph. Celara smiled. Yes, humanity is learning that progress does not come from fear or control, but from understanding, collaboration, and careful action. We have begun a journey that will shape generations to come. Ryland's gaze swept across the city. This is only the beginning. There are still challenges ahead, but we have proven that humans, when guided by reason and courage, can achieve extraordinary things without conflict or harm. Celara looked to the horizon, where the twin suns had almost disappeared. And together we will continue to guide them. Every mind inspired, every idea nurtured, every discovery celebrated, it all contributes to the future we are building. As night fell, the city shimmered with light from starships, laboratories, and homes. Citizens paused to look at the sky, dreaming of what was possible, imagining new inventions, and considering ideas that had once seemed unreachable. Schools continued lessons on energy, ethics, and exploration. Labs experimented openly but carefully, demonstrating that curiosity could be safely expressed. The council chambers, once places of rigid control, now served as forums for discussion, debate, and collaboration. Even the oldest, most cautious members listened to ideas with respect, recognizing that humanity's potential was too vast to be restricted by fear. In the quiet moments, Rylan and Celara would walk through the city together, observing children building small machines, citizens discussing theories, and scientists sharing results. Each moment was a reminder that their efforts had planted seeds, and those seeds were growing into something extraordinary. One day, a group of young students approached Rylan with a model starship. "Captain Cade, we built this using what we learned from your talks and the trial program," one said proudly. "It's small, but we want to explore." Rylan knelt to examine the model, his eyes shining. "You have done excellently. Remember, every great achievement starts small. Use your minds, your hearts, and your courage, and the possibilities are endless." Celara watched, her heart full. "They are the future," she said softly, "and now they know they can think, explore, and create responsibly." Rylan nodded. "Yes. Humanity's true strength lies not in fear, but in the ability to act wisely, to innovate carefully, and to inspire others. That is what will carry us forward, beyond Elendra, beyond the stars, and into the universe itself." The city of Elendra continued to thrive, a living testament to human courage, intelligence, and unity. Rylan and Celara stood together on the palace balcony, looking out over the city and beyond, knowing that the journey of discovery was only beginning. Every citizen, from the youngest student to the wisest council member, had a part to play. Humanity had proven that when courage was guided by reason and curiosity was balanced with care, nothing was impossible. And in that quiet, hopeful night, as stars began to twinkle above the city, Elendra seemed to breathe with promise. The princess and the captain had led by example, showing that leadership, courage, and intelligence could change a civilization without violence, without fear, and without conflict. They had awakened humanity's potential, and the world, no, the universe, was ready to watch it shine. The journey would continue, discoveries awaited, and new minds would rise. But the spark of courage, reason, and hope that Rylan Cade and Princess Celara had ignited would never fade. Humanity's story, full of curiosity, ingenuity, and care, had reached a new chapter, one that promised greatness beyond imagination. He stood defiant, while the princess defied the entire council.